What's up, Hokie Nation, and welcome into a transfer portal update here at Tech Sideline. So much to get to, so much to break down, so let's introduce everybody. To my right is lead analyst and columnist Chris Coleman. Across the way is our managing editor David Cunningham. Nick Brown, our director of media, is producing behind the scenes, and I am your host, Carter Hill. Guys, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Chris, you were in Danville this weekend. How was that? How was that excursion down to Dan Vegas in the casino?
Yeah, I went to the casino. And it was funny, we grew up calling Danville Dan Vegas, and how it actually is Dan Vegas.
Okay. What have you been up to, Dave? Basketball? Just basketball?
Writing a lot of commitment articles.
Yeah, okay, very fair.
Virginia Tech has gotten 6 guys, and most of them came this weekend. 3 of them came Friday and Saturday. And then 2 more came... 3 came Friday and 2 more came Saturday. So my head's been spinning, and I had 2. I think like the last 10 articles outside of Chris's Q&A, the last 10 things on our site are from me.
You're turning out commitments. You did both basketball games Saturday.
Yeah, I covered both basketball games at the same time. I had 2 different tweet threads going, and I did not cross them over. So
that's awesome.
I'm ready for a little bit of a break, hopefully. So I got all my Christmas shopping done last night, so very last minute.
Okay, I still got a little bit to do. We got 2 days. So no, we're not calling this a podcast. We got to save episode 400 for the Mayo Bowl preview. So just going through the transfer portal, and again, David, you alluded to it. 6 guys the Hokies have added, and I think there's a lot of high upside. What kind of stands out to you about the additions and what Virginia Tech has brought in?
You know, it's funny, Chris, I think you'd probably agree that in this day and age, there are a lot of guys, I think, still maybe left over from COVID or right after, guys that maybe slipped through the cracks initially. The portal provides these guys an opportunity to go to, maybe you're at a D2 school or an FCS school or a lower level in the FBS, and now you get scouted by these big schools and picked up. And I think Virginia Tech is finding out that, where it initially in this NIL game, it's basically maybe players want them to overpay. The current guys on the roster want them to overpay and say, hey, we think we're worth more than we actually are. And some of these guys are like, hey, we're willing to take a pay cut for a better opportunity, right? And I think that's kind of what it is now. And I think there are a lot of these guys, all these guys are coming from a lower level. Bowling Green, Central Missouri, Hampton, East Carolina, Rice. The only one in there that's not is Clemson. So you're seeing a lot Tech go out and I think find and identify a lot of really, really good lower level talent.
Yeah, and you see this every year with teams in the portal. Like Duke went 9-3 this year. I know there are fans complaining about where Virginia Tech's portal come from. But if you look up and down Duke's roster, Duke went 9-3, taking dudes from the Ivy League and things like that. It's more important how Virginia Tech coaches these guys. And these guys, most of them are proven players, albeit at a lower level. What really stands out to me is the number of guys with multiple years remaining. Marcellus Hawkins, 2 years. Jahzari Priester, 3 years. Isaiah Murray Brown, 2 years. Tyson Flowers, 2 years. Even Sherrod Koval missed a year with an injury or part of a year with an injury, and it's not outside the realm of possibility that he could maybe get a medical hardship for that year. So number of these guys are going to have more than 1 year in Blacksburg.
Yeah. Looking at the portal commits as a whole, I should have read it through from the get-go, but safety Sherrod Koval Jr. comes in from Clemson, safety Tyson Flowers from Rice, cornerback Isaiah Brown-Murray from East Carolina, Jahzari Priester, defensive tackle from Hampton, Terrian Stewart, running back from Bowling Green, and Marcellus Hawkins, a running back from Division II Central Missouri. It does seem like Virginia Tech has fortified the safety room, which was one of their biggest needs this offseason.
Yeah, and I don't know that Tech's done adding at that spot.
Okay, right.
But yeah, I mean, you lose essentially your top 3 guys there in Jalen Stroman, who played in the first game of 2024 and then got hurt and then is transferring out. Jalen Jones is graduating, and Mose Phillips portaled to Missouri. But the Hokies went out and picked up Tyson Flowers, who I think is a terrific ad. Albeit his PFF grades are great, albeit they did come at Rice in the AAC, but looks like on paper he's going to be an upgrade over over some of those other guys. You remember you got Quentin Reddish still there. Sherrod Koval, I'm interested to see how he pans out. He's a former top 10 in-state kid from Oscar Smith. But, injuries and whatnot, he only played 402 snaps at Clemson. But they've kind of flipped that room on a dime.
Yeah, you bring in Flowers with 2 years left. You lose Mose Phillips, who has 2 years left. It's going to be interesting to see how those guys progress. Mose Phillips did not make progress from his freshman year to his sophomore year. And in fact, in some ways got worse. He had a 50.6 coverage grade this past season. Well, Tyson Flowers is going to come in with an 84.1 coverage grade from last year. I don't think people understand, how bad Moses' season was in 2024. Out of 51 ACC safeties who played 200-plus snaps, he ranked 46th in the conference. I think he's a high upside player. I think he's a talented player. Perhaps he goes to Missouri and plays great the last 2 years, but point being, he did not play well at Virginia Tech.
Yeah.
So this, on paper, Flowers is an upgrade over both those safeties that Virginia Tech lost. We'll see about Koval. He was a 4-star recruit, top 10 player in the state of Virginia coming out of high school. 402 snaps at Clemson. Got injured 1 year.
Was it an ACL injury?
It was an ACL
injury. In 23.
Yeah. Started one game in his career there. He's got some talent, but you face a lot of competition at Clemson for spots. So we'll see how that one ends up. But Flowers is a proven player. I'm very, very excited to land him.
Yeah, those guys come in and they're automatically the two oldest guys in that room. Essentially, I think that Devin Alves is like a redshirt junior in there. But I mean, they're automatically in some ways the two most experienced guys. Because the only other guy that's played significant snaps is Quentin Reddish, and he just finished his true freshman year. So, Flowers, honorable mention, all AAC player this year, only missed 4 tackles, which I know you're excited about. It's funny. I was looking through PFF grades, and I was like, man, Virginia Tech safeties were not very good tacklers. And you bring in a guy like Tyson Flowers, who is a proven pretty good tackler. Chris mentioned his 84.1 coverage grade. For comparison, Quentin Reddish, as a true freshman, was Tech's highest grader at that spot, 64.6. So almost 20 spots lower.
20 points.
20 points lower, yes. Jalen Jones, 62.3, and Mose Phillips, 50.6. And none had an overall... none were above an overall 66.5 grade. Flowers comes in at 76.5, so basically 10 points better. And this wasn't just a one-off season, I should add. In 2023, 84.0 PFF grade in about 320 snaps. So this is a pretty good proven player, albeit at the group of 5 level, but you come in, this is a guy who should have an immediate impact.
Yeah.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was going to say also... Remember that Virginia Tech needs a star linebacker, and a star can be a safety type or it could be a linebacker type. I would say the Keontae Jenkins, as a former safety, was more of a safety type. So if Virginia Tech ends up taking a third safety, it's possible that one of these safeties could end up as a star linebacker in Virginia Tech's scheme. We'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah.
I wouldn't make any projections there until after I see how the class as a whole shapes up. But Tech is in the market for a star, and it could be one of these safety guys.
Well, let's talk about the running back position too, because obviously you're losing Bayshot Sutton, you're losing Malachi Thomas to the portal, which, by the way, he is playing in the bowl game. By the way, it seems like
it's a fluid situation. Okay. I don't think there's official yes, he's playing. But he was at practice. So, he's practicing for the bowl game. So, I assume he's going to play. Pry basically said... Pry is kind of danced around all of those situations. Those guys who are and are not playing.
I mean, whether or not Malachi Madison plays in the bowl game is going to have a huge impact on Minnesota's game plan.
I think.
Sorry, Nick's laugh got me. It always gets me in the back. Go ahead.
Malachi Thomas. I think that was a spot. Just not to get off track, but I think that was a spot where Virginia Tech was basically we're not sure if Bayshot Tutin's playing in the bowl game. We don't want to go into that game with only 2 scholarship running backs. So Malachi Thomas, come play this.
I can't wait to write the game preview. It's going to be I don't know who all's playing. Here's my score prediction. The end.
Okay. Yeah. That's fair.
But anyway, at running back, I really like Terrian Stewart.
Yeah. Fits in nicely. Yep.
You look at his his numbers. Scott Loeffler product at Bowling Green. Greg Nozel, former Virginia Tech offensive lineman, was his running backs coach for a year and the offensive coordinator. All first team All MAC in 2024, 890 yards, 6 touchdowns, 160 carries. That's 5.6 yards per carry in just 10 games. He's the program's all-time leader in yards per carry at 6.0. Almost 2,400 rush yards and 23 touchdowns in his career. His PFF grades are great, Chris. I know you can dive into that. And basically right there with Bashal Tutin.
Yeah, you're right. 63 forced missed tackles this past year and 160 attempts. He's the only player in the top 20 with fewer than 160 attempts. Elusive rating, 5th in the country. In 2023, his 95.3 offensive grade led all FBS running backs. He's an outstanding runner. You know, as a comparison, Tutin had 57 forced missed tackles and 183 attempts this past year. It's a slightly different level of competition, but, you know, he'll play. He'll play at this level.
Yeah.
He's 5'9", 220 pounds. He's built more like
a bowling ball?
Herbert. Yeah, he's like a bowling ball. Like Khalil Herbert, Bashal Tutin, Terrion Stewart, they're all built kind of like that. They're all in that old Chiron Stith mold from way back in the day. Low center of gravity, big legs, hard guys to tackle. I don't think Stewart has the breakaway speed of Tutin or Khalil Herbert, but he will run over people and he will run through tackles at all levels. You see him run through tackles of defensive linemen even. So I think this is about as good of a pickup as you would get at running back from the portal for Virginia Tech.
Yeah, and this is kind of what I'm talking about in terms of a guy who, you know, I think he was kind of just a 3-star guy out of high school, goes to Bowling Green, has a lot of success, and now he's coming to Virginia Tech. And I think Elijah Brooks knows how to coach running backs. And what did I tell you? We sat here on the podcast and I said Virginia Tech had batted 100 or 1,000 on its last 3 transfer portal running backs. You know, I think you can maybe throw this one in that group too. I mean, you had Khalil Herbert, Raheem Blackshear, and Bashal Tutin. Now you pick up Terrion Stewart. This guy's legit. And in terms of guys you could have gone out and get, you know, we were talking about last week or so. Well, here's who it looks like Virginia Tech might be targeting, but I think Tech kind of went over those guys and had Terrion Stewart really, really high on its board.
And this is a lesson that people have to learn every portal period. I think it's something maybe they relearn every portal period. You see the offer list coming out, and everybody's freaking out. Like, oh my God, we're just recruiting a bunch of players that nobody's ever heard of and things like that. Guys, I don't want this guy, I don't want that guy. And I always write every year, it's like, listen, that list you see on Twitter, like not everybody reports their scholarship offers. We didn't even know Virginia Tech was recruiting Terrion Stewart.
Right.
He was actually posting his offer list and his visit list and everything on his Twitter account. He never once posted that Virginia Tech had offered him or that he had visited. And then out of the blue, he commits to Virginia Tech.
It was all USC, right?
Yeah.
It was USC all over the place. All over
Southern Cal. Exactly. So I just calm down. Right? I would enjoy your Christmas and don't worry about where these dudes are going.
Yeah, but this is a huge pickup.
Yeah.
I mean, this is, you know, and I'm sure we'll talk about Hawkins in a sec, the other running back, but, you know, Stewart, he is legit. He's the real deal. And people might say, oh, well, you know, he only came from Bowling Green. It's like, remember where Bashal Tutin came from, right?
Yeah.
This is a North Carolina A&T guy.
Right.
And Elijah Brooks knows how to coach running backs. And I think he and Hawkins, assuming Hawkins is healthy, he missed some time this year. I think those two can provide a solid duo. And more importantly, Hawkins has 2 years remaining, if not 3. And you give some of these young guys behind them, Jeremiah Coney, a guy who I think has a high upside, but some of these other guys, Jeff Overton comes in, Tyler Mason just finished his freshman year. You give some of those young guys behind them a chance to develop.
Yeah, one thing I will note, they'll have to work with Stewart on his pass blocking. He's not a third down back. Like, he hardly catches any passes. If you look at his snaps on PFF, he's hardly on the field for passing plays. So he's a guy that it's kind of one-dimensional right now, which is okay. You can game plan around that.
He's really good one-dimensional player.
Yes, exactly. A really good one-dimensional player. And, they can work on him, with pass blocking and receiving and things like that. But they're called running backs for a reason, and they're not called blocking backs, right?
I just don't think the level jump is near as big of a deal as it was 5 years ago. Like, we talk about it with basketball, like a couple years ago, like, is Storm Murphy going to make the jump from Wofford to Virginia Tech? I think this is totally different. You mentioned Tootin, Quan Felton from Norfolk State, Michael Vick stomping grounds, by the way. He's getting introduced today. So I just don't think the level jump, I mean, we're seeing it all around the country with guys that have played at the FCS level that enter the portal and end up playing at Ohio State or Oklahoma or Alabama. And I just don't think it's that big of a deal anymore.
I think the bottom line is if guys can play, guys can play. Yeah. And I think that's what you're seeing. And I think Tech, again, to Tech's credit, I mean, you look down this list, I think there are at least 3 of these guys on here that will have immediate impacts, and that's good. And Tech's still not done. Like, you think you want to talk about where Tech is? Tech's got about close to 80 scholarship players right now.
77, I think.
Just below. I mean, Tech's probably going to add another bunch of guys. People are wondering, well, who's going to block for Terry and Stewart? Well, there's no offensive line coach yet. I'm sure that there might be some offensive linemen coming in once the offensive line coach is hired, right? Because people want to know who the coach is going to be. So this is a long process, and I urge people to remember that some of Tech's best commits came late. Remember when APR came?
Was in June, right?
He was like a May or June commit. Like, there's a whole nother portal window
Schley.
After this too. Yeah, well, I mean, granted, I mean, it didn't have quite the impact APR had, but yes, I mean, this is not a, oh my God, we have to get everything done by New Year's Day, right? It's like this is a long and fleshed out process, and I think so far Virginia Tech has done a pretty good job. Yeah,
and I would look for whenever that offensive line coach hire is made, which for all I know could be by the time we publish this podcast later today, but it would not be surprising if that coach brought a player or two from his previous school with him. I mean, that's just how it works in the portal these days. And that's one of the things you have to consider if you're Brent Pry and you're hiring coaches.
Yeah.
So Hawkins is probably your running back 2 next year. That's probably correct. I mean, he'll compete with Jeremiah Coney, but
we'll see. I think he had a good year. I mean, Division II. I mean, there's a difference between Division II and FCS.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And he's been a little injury prone. He was injured for the vast majority of 2024, and he was also hurt in 2022. So he'll end up getting a medical waiver. So he might end up having like 3 years left, but a good year in between. But there are some durability concerns. I would expect him to be a strong competitor for the number 2 spot, but I wouldn't like ink him into this.
Sure.
Yeah. I think that's the other thing. I mean, this guy, I was looking at like what he's done. He wasn't even a running back in high school. He was a quarterback and a cornerback. Like, this kid was a quarterback who was like first team all region or district or whatever. I mean, he did some really, really good things. I mean, he's a 1,000-yard rusher in 2023. Granted, this is D2.
Sure.
But this is a guy who I think can come in and have an impact. I'm more so just concerned, yes, about his injuries. He didn't play a ton this year. But he is productive, and he's a really good receiving back too. And I think that's interesting. So I'm curious to see where he slots in. The other thing too is, I mean, I think Virginia Tech feels pretty good about Jeremiah Coney, and I think he could be a solid number 2 back if he beats out Hawkins.
Sure.
Right? Like, that's going to be an interesting competition in that spring. You slot Stewart in as number 1 back, and you got Hawkins and Coney and maybe some of the other young guys battling for that number 2 spot.
Back to the defensive side of the ball, Jahzari Priester is somebody that I think a lot of people here are excited about out of Hampton and Western Branch, which is in Chesapeake, correct?
Chesapeake.
Yes.
Chesapeake. So he comes in, will fill a need up front, and he's somebody that a lot of people are excited about in Blacksburg as well.
Yeah, I know a decent amount about Priester. He only played football for 1 year in high school, his senior year. He was a basketball player before that. So the reason he ended up at Hampton is by the time there was any film on him, almost all recruiting classes were filled up.
Yeah.
Right? Because recruiting starts in the summer these days. And he didn't play his first football games until most guys in his class had already made their commitments. So he slipped to Hampton. Very raw guy. They list him at 6'8", 250 on their website. He's actually 6'6", over 290 pounds. I'm sure that the Virginia Tech offensive coaches are going to try to fight for him to play offensive tackle because he's got his 6'9" wingspan. He redshirted in 2023, got on the field in the 2 deep at Hampton for 160 snaps. this past year. Has a high upside. Athletic guy, long arms. Most people watching this podcast won't know who I'm talking about, but it's a little bit similar to former Virginia Tech defensive tackle Jeff Holland, who also went to Western Branch. Jeff Holland was like 220 pounds coming out of high school, but like had a size 18 shoe or something like that. So Virginia Tech offered him on, this is what we think his growth potential is. And sure enough, Jeff became a good defensive tackle for Tech once he kind of, grew into his frame. And Priester's the same way, except Priester didn't come to Virginia Tech right out of high school. Spent a couple of years somewhere else, but similar type of backstory, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, he's got 3 years of eligibility remaining. I'm sure that, whether it's Jahzari Priester or whoever the new offensive line coach is going to be, both. I mean, they're going to be fighting over him, but to have 3 years to develop him, I think the most important part is you figure out immediately where he slots in and develop him from there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think he's not a guy I don't think that's going to come in and have an immediate impact necessarily. Like he's not going to necessarily slot into the 2 deep immediately, I don't think. I mean, he could compete for it, but this is a guy who I think in the long run could be a really, really solid player.
Maybe a little bit like what Curtis Perry was supposed to be, where you bring him in, develop him.
Right, except he doesn't have issues.
Yeah.
To say the least.
Yeah, Curtis Perry's no longer here, just to clarify. So at the cornerback position, Isaiah Brown Murray, David, good point here. He led ECU in snaps with 830 last year and kind of adds some stability to a group that still is pretty young with Dante Lovett and Thomas Williams and could slide into one of those 2 spots right away.
Yeah, and you look at all those guys coming back for Virginia Tech at corner, they're all third-year guys or younger. Actually, there's, I think, just probably one third-year guy. Well, Dante Lovett's the only third-year guy with really any experience. There'll be a couple of redshirt sophomores.
You got Christian Williams and Thomas Williams,
right?
But like a lot of these guys haven't played.
We'll find out about a lot more about them in the bowl game. Yeah, because they're going to play a ton of snaps in the bowl game. But yeah, this is a guy who's over 1,200 career snaps. So as a comparison, 1,246 career snaps for Brown Murray. The most in Virginia Tech's cornerback room coming back is Dante Lovett with 244. That's a difference of 1,002 snaps. So
that's
just the
crazy
experience factor here. And, he graded out pretty well at corner for East Carolina. So, again, this is a guy that will come in and most likely start next to Dante Lovett. At worst, he's your third cornerback. So this is a good get for Tech. And, again, he's got 2 years left.
Yeah, he's an experienced guy. I mean, a guy who he was kind of ECU's number 2 corner this year. I forget the guy's name, but kind of projected like a first-round pick in the NFL. That's the guy he was playing next to, the number 1 corner at ECU, and he got hurt in the 3rd game of the year, out for the rest of the season, and Brown Murray kind of had to step up and fill those number 1 shoes. He's graded out well these last 2 years. I mean, you talk about 74.0 overall grade, according to PFF, 74.1 run defense, 80.4 tackling.
Another good tackler.
You love that.
Amazing how generally good defenses are good tackling defenses, right? So that's the first step to playing defense. You got to be able to tackle people. Yeah. You got to want to tackle people.
73.2 coverage grade. All of those were top 15 ranks at cornerback in the American Athletic Conference. I mean, he's an experienced guy with a lot of snaps under his belt, and that's something I think Tech just needs. Like, I like the way Tech has a lot of talent in that cornerback room, but a lot of those kids are just young and just need that playing time. Dante Lovett, I think, has played pretty well. He's going to get his fair share of snaps, but you've got Christian Williams, Thomas Williams. They've got like 3 true freshmen coming in at that spot, right? There's a lot of guys there, and to go out and be able to get a guy who has seen plays, and not just 1 year, but seen a lot of plays over a lot of years, I think that's very valuable, not only just for that room, but for the defense as a whole. You've kind of got a veteran at that spot.
So what is next for Virginia Tech? I think there's still, again, to his point, some spots to fill. I know you would love a star linebacker.
I would love a few linebackers,
and then and then on the offensive line, you probably got to wait and see who's going to come in. But on top of things, there's still a lot of time to fill some spots. So what is next for Virginia?
Plenty of time. You talk about the star linebacker. They just offered Jordan Bass from Pitt, and he's a guy who finished. Virginia Tech finished number 2 to Pitt in his recruitment. He's a 7.57 guy. I don't know if he would be an inside linebacker or a bigger star. I'm not sure, but I know Virginia Tech has offered him. You talk about linebacker recruiting in general. You talk about offensive line coach potentially bringing in some guys. Well, we don't know who Virginia Tech's defensive coordinator is going to be, and so we also don't know who their linebacker coach is going to be. So I don't think the offer list at linebacker is completely filled up either at this point. So there's still, I think Virginia Tech is filled up at running back right now. Yeah. But other than that, they're probably going to take another safety, maybe, especially if he could maybe play the star position. So I doubt they'll take another corner, but you never know. But for the most part, Virginia Tech is still on the market at almost every position. So a lot's going to happen between now and whenever. And there's still, what's today, the 23rd? Yeah. Players still have 5 days to enter the portal. Right. Yeah. Plus the playoff teams, you have 5 days from the date of your elimination.
Really?
Yeah. So so anybody still playing football, in the latter rounds of the playoffs, they can enter the portal after the official portal actually closes because they're in the playoffs.
Yeah. What a mess that is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they actually should do away with this portal period, but that's another conversation.
That's an hour and a half long podcast for June.
Yeah. I had a conversation with somebody the other day. Actually, their significant other is a Penn State fan, and they were used a hypothetical, the backup Penn State quarterback. It's like Drew Aller's probably coming back. This was before he entered. Drew Aller's probably coming back. Why would he stick around and be the backup again, right? But if he enters the portal, he probably can't play in the playoff with these guys, right? So you've got teams losing very important players. But that's a discussion for another time. Carter, you asked what's next for Virginia Tech. I think you'll get some coaching news soon, at least in one spot. But this is, a very fluid situation. I know there's a bunch of guys visiting left and right. I mean, Tech had, I want to say, like 4, 5, 6, 7 guys like every day visiting last week. That's what Brett Pry told us when we talked to him. So, there are like a couple different names, like Isaiah Cash. Sam Houston State is a guy who played in a bowl game recently. I think Tech is high on. Sam Phillips, wide receiver from Chattanooga, I think Tech's pretty high on. One of the guys that visited recently, Tyreek Poindexter, I think, from VMI. There are a bunch of guys all over the place, right? And the tough part in the portal is that everything is, it's like a domino effect everywhere. Like if one guy leaves, say a guy leaves at Southern Cal, well, that might open a spot that might not have been filled by X guy. Now it is filled. Okay, well, Virginia Tech thought it could get X guy, right? Like it's a fluid situation, and that's the tough part about it.
There are 2 or 3 offensive linemen that Virginia Tech has offered, right? But I think those guys haven't committed to Virginia Tech because I'm not convinced they're committable offers, because Virginia Tech is waiting to announce their offensive line hire and waiting to see the trickle-down effect from that. If that guy can bring players with him from the school he was coaching at previously, which is which we believe is a peer institution, same level as Virginia Tech, and there's some good players at that school. So you're just kind of waiting it out for that. So be patient, enjoy Christmas, and things will shake out in the next week or so.
Hey, you know what other position Virginia Tech doesn't need to take anybody at?
Quarterback.
Yeah,
How about that?
I think that's the only position that Virginia Tech has not been actively recruiting this portal period.
Yeah. But Carter, overall, man, I just think this is one of those things where, if you can get a veteran wide receiver, you're probably gonna add it, considering you're losing a bunch of veterans. You're obviously gonna add offensive linemen. You're obviously going to add defensive linemen because you're losing veterans up there, right? You're obviously going to add linebackers because you need linebackers. Tech probably needed a veteran cornerback. Tech added a veteran cornerback. Do you want to add more safeties considering you're losing kind of your 3 most experienced options? Well, Tech's added 2 experienced guys, right? So it's kind of what goes out comes in. I think of the Sneetches, Dr. Seuss,
No.
No. Somebody will get that reference. I mean, it's going to be balanced, right? Like Tech loses guys at certain position, Tech fills at a certain position. You kind of balance those numbers out.
All right, Christmas is in 2 days. Christmas Eve is tomorrow, which is crazy. Anybody got any fun Christmas plans before we head on out of here for the week?
No, David's going home. I went home this past weekend, so I figured Tech would get a bunch of portal commits. I thought it would be like when we did our TSL Christmas dinner last week, when everybody would commit. That wasn't the case. It was when I went home. It was when I went home for Christmas is when they all committed over the weekend. So David had to write all those articles. But the good news is I'm not going back to Danville for actual Christmas. I will be in Blacksburg.
That means Tech's not going to pick up any.
Oh, you're here this week?
Yeah, I'm here this week.
Okay,
But I mean, no, they will. They will. Trust me. I remember reading an article a couple weeks ago. There was some dude who said he was going out on Christmas Day. I swear, I hope that dude goes somewhere else. But anyway, I'll be here just in case.
Yeah.
Are you coming in the office this week? Like, are you coming in?
I might be here tomorrow. I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not going to be here on Christmas. But,
Okay.
I'll be here Thursday and Friday. Yeah.
I'm going up to Northern Virginia and Maryland to visit family.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Nice.
Well, we'll have you covered. Andy's in Richmond right now visiting family. So the nice thing about our jobs, nice can be you can take that which way you want, is that we can do our jobs from anywhere. So
True.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I expect some more news on the portal front coming soon. Again, this is something where it's like a kid you did like Stewart, I think is a great example. A kid you did not know Virginia Tech was heavily recruiting, commits out of the blue, and it's like,
I think Isaiah Brown Murray was another one, right? Yeah. He was not on the offer list.
That's correct.
Line. He just committed out of the blue.
Oh, that's a guy. And funny enough, Chris, you and I were talking the other day about, let's pre-write this stuff. And you had mentioned pre-writing Tyson Flowers, but didn't actually mean it. Yeah. You said, pre-write this. Oh, wait, wrong safety. Yeah. And Tyson Flowers is the one who committed.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're trying to stay on top of everything, but it's complicated because there are so many guys in the portal.
And then I'm going to Carowinds tonight to enjoy some Christmas festivities. Then I'll be back
Hopefully
tomorrow.
It's not too cold.
It's supposed to be. So down in Charlotte. And then Nick, next week I'll chime you in here. We're doing a bowl preview on Monday next week.
I believe so.
Tentatively?
I think that's right.
I think that's right.
Okay. I was at the Lincoln Memorial, by the way, when Isaiah Brown Murray committed, and that was the one dude that I had not made a graphic for. I was so mad. I was like, I'm about a 45-minute metro ride from my computer right now, so I can't do that right now. So
Nick, the other day at the Navy men's basketball game and Radford women's game, got David to pick up his computer from his house just so he could have it on press row. And I think you were at the game with your grandparents, and every single time Tech had a kid enter the portal, like Ose Phillips in the portal, Nick would sneak over to press row and he'd be like, midway through the first half.
Nick brought it to make graphics like for after the game, but I think Chance Fitzgerald entered the portal during the game, and Nick just walked over, opened his computer on press row, made up a graphic, and walked back.
Well, I was like, man, David, I hope they don't kick me out for being a fan on press row. And David's like, you're the media. I was like, oh, that's true.
Technically, it's true.
Yeah, they're true. Then
maybe one day they'll do away with the December portal period, so we can all enjoy our Decembers like normal human beings.
That'd be so nice. Yeah. They should make a rule: no hiring coaches and no portal additions the week of Christmas.
I know, right? That's for sure.
Shut it down. All right. And with that, for Chris Coleman, David Cunningham, Nick Brown, I'm Carter Hill. Thanks for tuning in, and we will talk to you next week for the Duke's Mayo Bowl preview.